There, in case you're just joining us, we are interrupting regular programming because he had an update on the coronavirus response. And his goal in this press conference was really to make more clear what phase 3 reopening is going to look like in Louisiana. Well, after that press conference, what is certain is that it's still not exactly crystal clear. One of the major things that Governor Edwards said today is that businesses will be able to open at 75% capacity. Many businesses, not all of them, of course, many businesses, restaurants, churches, salons, gyms, many government offices, things like that, buildings that contain offices will be able to work at 75% capacity. Now, the thing with that is people still have to practice social distancing and they still have to wear their masks. That statewide mask mandate remains in effect. Governor Edwards even said this afternoon that Louisiana has proved by flattening the last curve and the last spike that we had that was at the beginning of the summer, by staying open somewhat and using those preventative measures, we have shown that it's possible to do that and continue operating some of these businesses. So he's hoping that people will continue to wear the masks, will continue to wash their hands a lot, will continue to practice social distancing and maintain that distance between people, ordering out from restaurants when you can, not having gatherings that are too large. Now, something that is also unclear in this latest announcement is what's happening with the bars. Governor Edwards says that the bars who have remained in parishes and areas that have remained below a 5% positive rate for 2 weeks may be able to open if the local leadership in those parishes signs off on it. Now, those bars will also have to open at a diminished capacity, 25%, only up to 50 people indoors, he said. Those bars in those areas where they've gotten the go-ahead from the government and they have been below 5% positivity, those bars can open. Now, it sounds like not very many places in Louisiana are actually eligible for that at this point. And, of course, Mayor LaToya Cantrell here in New Orleans has made it clear that we are remaining in phase 2 restrictions until kids get back to school and we find out what's going to happen with them. So New Orleans, obviously not among the parishes in the state where bars can be reopened. Another key announcement today from Governor Edwards was about nursing homes. And we know so many people out there have loved ones in nursing homes, are just really wanting to see the loved ones that are in those homes. They've been isolated for 6 months. Well, the governor said that they're working on a plan to allow visitation outdoors in some of those same areas where they have a lower positivity. So those are some of the key takeaways from the governor's press conference today. One thing that he did emphasize, there is a system of thunderstorms that's off the coast of Florida that could impact Louisiana as early next week. And of course, our meteorologists will have the very latest on that and all of these new announcements on phase 3 coming up on the Eyewitness News tonight at 5 o'clock.